Hey, what's up, everybody? How you doing? I'm your host, Cogee. Welcome to the I've Been Falsely Accused show, part 17, with my man, my co-host, Mr. Jeffrey Deskovic. Let me tell you, everybody, I mean, we've been getting a lot of feedback with this show, you know, as far as people saying thank you, Cogee, especially all the people that see me out. When they see me out and about, you know, Cogee, thank you for doing this show. And they ask me so many questions, you know, about what they heard on the show. And that's how I know that people really listen to the show, because it's different people that come through the show. And people go word for word with me with what they said on the show, you know, how hurtful it was, you know, how they rallied for that person when they said how they got out and what they done to get out. And I just want to say to all our listeners around the world, me and Jeffrey definitely want to say thank you. He'll say thank you to you in a second. You know, we just want to say that we do this show for the love of the people. This show comes with no color lines. And believe me, I know, you know, our African-American brothers, we getting locked up at an alarming rate. But we still do this for every color, because I don't get on here and just fight for one person. I fight for everybody. Me and Jeffrey, we fight for everybody. And that's the way we got to do it. You know, we got to have somebody who's in the fight, and everybody comes through this show with no color lines, and it's all about love. And Jeffrey, I'll let you say your thank yous and you break it down real quick. Then I want to bring Miss Peaches in real quick and let her speak about, you know, what she heard a minute ago with Miss Sabrina. Then Jeffrey has a special guest that we going to bring in, and Jeffrey's going to, you know, give an interview. He's going to lead the charge on this show, on, you know, the second hour, this hour. So Jeffrey, do your thing.
Yeah, just, you know, Cogee, nobody tunes into the show. It's just, you know, just you and I. It's like a tree falling in the forest. Does anybody hear it? Does it ultimately make a large difference? So we definitely want to, you know, thank our listeners for tuning in, and we want to encourage them to not only continue to tune in, but encourage other people to do the same thing.
That's right. And we definitely need y'all to go to the websites and hit me and Jeffrey's websites and let us know what you think about the show. Let us know personally. That makes us feel good, too. You don't have to wait till you see me and him out, you know, and then come and tell us. You can write us and let us know what you're thinking in the middle of the night, through the day, anything that you're thinking, or what you think that we can do better also to bring a better show. I mean, we open to suggestions, but remember, we do this show out of love. We don't get paid to do, we don't get rich to do these shows, but we go to bed rich and full of love. We go to bed knowing that we done the best we could do with the time that we had through the day. We put forth a good effort to bring great shows, and that's what we're trying to do. Miss Peaches, I want to go to you real quick. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I want to say Happy Father's Day to all you guys on the phone and in the air.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Miss Peaches, what'd you think about Sabrina's story real quick?
Her story was really deep, and she is definitely full of knowledge, you know, to be a young girl. And to have gone through that, she's strong and someone to admire, and definitely someone to listen to and reach out to.
That's right. Foxy, what'd you think about what you heard?
I thought it was a heavy show, and I'm just glad that she got out to start her life all over. And to educate these young girls out here that having a baby is not the thing to do. You need to finish your education, get married, and then have a baby.
Okay. Miss Peaches, speak on that real quick about being a young mom.
Well, it's definitely a lot harder than it seems. You know, your whole life changes. It's not, you don't live your life just for yourself anymore. You always have to make sure that your child is taken care of and the priority in your life. So if you're not done living, or you feel like there's a lot of things you want to do, traveling or learning more, you better go ahead and do that and then have a child, because that changes everything.
That's right. Now, what I want to do, I want to go to Jeffrey real quick. And Jeffrey, I want you to explain to these young listeners that might hear this, that will hear this, because the parents should play these shows for their children. Jeffrey, what don't these young moms understand about having these babies very young, but not knowing the responsibility of a baby? But when these babies go down sick, or they slip up and accidentally kill these babies on an accident, I mean, even an accident. Jeffrey, talk about the law and how the law don't care about an accident. Can you speak on that real quick? Then we're going to move forward with your guest.
Yeah, a lot of times, you know, parents, you know, mothers, you know, they find themselves, you know, wrongfully charged with killing their kids. I mean, whether that's through a shaken baby syndrome, or, you know, a mistaken diagnosis. You know, Sabrina Butler's instance. You know, her case is just one case out of many. So let's all, while we celebrate, her freedom and her success afterwards, let's also remember the people that's still in, that still hasn't seen the light of day, or who may not ever see the light of day.
That's right. But see, that's why we also have this show, me and Jeffrey, to where if you have a family member who's in there and they want to come on this show and they want to talk about their case, if they've been falsely accused or they done shown where they have been falsely accused, but all the evidence has just been ran over and they not listening to it, that's where me and Jeffrey come in. They can come on here, they can speak, they can put it out there to the world. Maybe me and Jeffrey can find, somebody who will take the case and help them out. But me and Jeffrey don't know unless y'all let us know. We got so much on our plate off the show that we can't keep up with everybody. You have to call, you have to write the websites, you have to let us know what you're going through. And y'all see, with Mr. Victor that called in, you see what we did for him. But that's because Victor reached out to us. Me and Jeffrey, we don't know. We don't have time to search for who's going through something. You have to let us know because we are fighting with so much through our own personal lives, doing, our work off the air to try to bring a better day. So, Jeffrey, did I say it good, Jeffrey?
Absolutely, Cogee. Listen, man, it's almost like, to bring in a sports analogy real quick, the NFL, I remember when John Elway retired, he said, look, if all I had to do was just show up on Sunday and play football games, I wouldn't retire. But it's all that work that leads up to it, from Monday through Saturday, that you don't see.
That's right.
Which drains on me. So, people, they hear the show. It's not just the show just magically happens and all we do is just get together on there. There's a lot of, off-air coordination and work and, preparation that goes into it.
That's right. And you know what? And in the last hour, I want Jeffrey to definitely break down his day-to-day to you guys. And you'll understand where he's coming from the time he rises to the time he goes to sit on side his bed to take his shoes off. He's beat down. When I'm talking to him on the phone, sometimes he goes, Cogee, you know what? I'm not trying to cut this short, but I am so exhausted, and I got to turn around and get right back up in 4 hours, to go do another interview or to go speak or to go, meet with somebody who's going through something. Anybody that know me personally know I got more time than money right now. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, I'm telling you, we going through so much to bring these shows and bring great shows. So, Jeffrey, we want to move on, and we want to get to your guests and have you to bring them in.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome to the I've Been Falsely Accused show, reporter from USA Today, Yamiche Alcindor, who's joining me physically here at my office in New York.
Hi, Jeff. How are you doing?
Hey. So, Yamiche, now you published a story in USA Today about reintegration. You touched on compensation. I was the focal point of the story, along with Jonathan Fleming. Could you get into a little bit of the substance of, the thrust of your article?
My article is really about helping people understand what people get after they're exonerated, life after exoneration. I think a lot of my story had to do with what happens when the media cameras are gone and people just need to go on and live their life. And surprisingly to me, but not to a lot of people maybe in the movement, people just are kind of released and have to deal with compensation issues. It takes so long to get compensation. So I really wanted to write about kind of the lack of support for people that have been exonerated.
Another question I have for you: what was some of the research that you did in connection with that that piece? Because kind of like doing these shows I just mentioned, it doesn't just happen. I'm sure you didn't just put pen to paper or fingers to a keypad. You had to do some research, and not just on these subjects, but just you had to do some learning in general. So, am I correct on that? First off,
yeah, you're very correct on that.
So what are some of the more surprising things that you learned in connection with that assignment?
Well, one thing I had to do, I guess it's in the research part to answer your first question, I interviewed probably about 30 people for the story. I worked on it for about a month. I'm a breaking news reporter, so for me, working on a story for a month is a really long time because usually I only have a couple of hours to do a story. And I interviewed people at the Innocence Project. I interviewed you as an exoneree, but also as someone who's running his own foundation. I interviewed lawyers, both defense attorneys and prosecutors. And I think for me the most surprising thing was that a lot of people said that people that are on parole that have actually committed their crimes, they get some help. Even if it's just a parole officer, that might not be that helpful, but at least they get a bus ticket, or they'll get a little bit of money, or they'll get maybe clothes. But I was super surprised to learn that for exonerated people, sometimes there is no plan. It's literally leave the jail today, okay, well, bye, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll get some money in your inmate in your inmate fund, but really nothing else. So for me, that was probably the most surprising thing, that if you're guilty, you might actually get more support than if you're innocent.
Right. Now, on that note, getting into that a little bit further, in terms of the nonprofit sector, are there a lot of organizations set up to help exonerees get their lives back together the same way that there are organizations that are focused on helping parolees, providing one service to them or another?
So from my research, there's way less organizations that help people after they're exonerated than those actually working to exonerate them. From my understanding, all 50 states have some sort of innocence project going, and they have some sort of other nonprofits, which is yours, going to help people that are not to be exonerated. But in terms of support afterward, I learned of one in Chicago, one in Texas. I learned of yours here in New York. The Innocence Project also has 2 social workers to help people when they're exonerated. But there's just really, really few services. And a social worker told me a lot of that has to do with the fact that the population is vastly smaller than people who are paroled. We're talking about a couple thousand people versus, tens of thousands of people being exonerated. But I think people are starting to understand that this is an area where we need a lot more help for people once they're exonerated.
And yet, despite these organizations you're mentioning, your story, as I recall, referenced Jonathan Fleming couch surfing. My term, you didn't use the term, but basically, he was sleeping on different people's couches. It almost sounded like on a day-to-day basis. Personally, it wasn't on almost like a quasi day-to-day basis. Would you agree with that?
Well, he was in couch surfing. From my understanding, he was really couch surfing in the idea that he was sleeping on a cousin's couch. But from my understanding, it was a pretty permanent couch in some ways, but it was a cousin's couch. It wasn't like he had a bed. He definitely didn't have his own place to live. And that's what he's continuing to do now. So in that case, yeah, he was pretty much, when he got out, he wasn't homeless because luckily for him, he had family to support him. But without his family, he would have likely been homeless.
Right. And would you say that other exonerees, some of them end up in shelters?
So I talked to a social worker at the Innocence Project who told me that some of the people that she's helped have actually been homeless, that they've actually had issues where they really didn't have anybody. But she said that that's somewhat rare because most of the time you'll have a family member that will take somebody in, or in some cases, like in California, I met 2 lawyers who actually let their clients sleep in their homes for 6 months because they just didn't have anywhere else to go. And that's obviously overstepping their roles because they really have already done usually years of work trying to get the person out of prison. But these lawyers in California went one step further and actually welcomed the people into their homes afterward.
So as you see it, though, is providing short-term and even long-term housing for exonerees, is that an obligation on friends or family, or should that really be something that's the government's obligation?
I think, according to all the experts I've talked to and the people that I've dealt with, and the people that helped me do my research, I think it should be something that the government should take care of. I think it's something that the systems, if this person is really failed by the system and they're innocent, that they should be given immediate housing. I think that that's an issue. Even prosecutors who I've talked to have said, we need to do a better job on it. So I think everyone kind of understands that short-term housing is an issue, but it is a state-by-state issue, so there's no federal law for exonerees that say you have to give people housing afterwards. So it's still considered, I guess in theory it should be the state's job, but in reality it is family and friends who are taking people in.
In terms of compensation, did you learn how long is the average wait from point of release to the time period in which people receive some kind of compensation, whether by settlement or just resolution, adjudication of a lawsuit?
So the first person who I talked to about that was you, and you told me it was 3 to 7 years. So I guess I'm telling you what you told me. I also talked to some prosecutors and a social worker I said at the Innocence Project who also confirmed that, and it takes somewhere between 3 to 7 years to get compensation. Especially based on some of the state laws. The good thing is that some states are providing more or providing less and less hurdles to get that. David Rantes, I'm sure you're aware of in New York, got his some compensation. I want to say less than a year after being exonerated. So I think we're seeing some states try to make it quicker. So yes, those 3 to 7 years, as you told me.
Right, but David Rantes, though, you'll agree that was a rare exception, and that no other case has settled that quick before or since him. That's not like a new trend. That was isolated. Or have you found that that's suddenly what's happening with a lot of cases?
I don't know about it across the country. I think David Rantes, everybody that I talk to says David Rantes is a rare thing. But the other thing that's interesting is that, as you know, the Brooklyn DA, the Brooklyn DA, Kevin Thompson, has really gotten serious about getting these exonerated people out of prison. So I think that there are a lot of defense attorneys who are saying this could be part of a trend because we're seeing more and more people being released in Brooklyn, and that maybe Brooklyn, in just as a microcosm, maybe Brooklyn will be going quicker than other states. But I don't know about a national trend. But I think Brooklyn, it might be the beginning of a trend if you're optimistic.
Right, but that's in terms of exoneration, not in terms of compensation.
That's in terms of exoneration, not compensation. So the people I talk to about that, though, say that they see optimism in the fact that there are all these people being exonerated, and that they think that might also translate into getting money quicker for people, because the Brooklyn DA has been so vigilant, and especially in the first 6 months of letting people out. So I mean, it still hasn't been seen. So I think we can still say that David Rantes, for the most part, is a rare thing. But if you ask me, maybe in 3 years, we might have a different outcome, just because we'll see what all these people got that have been exonerated.
So in interviewing people and learning things, and even to some extent, listening to the show and other works, how hard is it for you to not get involved emotionally? I mean, there is, as a columnist or reporter, I mean, I used to wear that hat. When I had the reporter function on, it was just a facts ma'am type thing. I dragged that. So, does the information you learn, how does it impact you, even just on a human level?
I think so. I think most reporters are trained to have some distance to your subject. I'm a breaking news reporter, so apart from doing exonerations, I went to Newtown and had to deal with so many funerals of kids who had been murdered in their classrooms. I've gone to the Boston Marathon bombing where hundreds of people feared for their life, and so I've had to deal with, I guess, somewhat traumatic situations. And so in that regard, I've trained myself to be a little bit emotionally distant from things, only because I feel like, as a reporter, I can't be crying in Newtown, which I did. I cried sometimes in Newtown, but I had to know I can't spend my day crying. Like, I'm here for a reason to report. I'm going to be a professional witness. So in this regard, I think, I get upset when I think about the idea that you spent 16 years in prison. And I think about you as a teenager, too. I think about, and I sit back and I think about this woman who's 17 years old, and you are trying to give CPR to your baby, and you did it wrong, and then you end up in prison. And I think there's also this idea of color. I think anybody, at least most of the people that I talk to, they talk about the idea of black and white and how that translates into it. So I think all those things kind of impact my thinking. But so I have gotten somewhat emotionally involved, but not crazily.
Gotcha. Okay, and with that, I believe we're going to go to a commercial break. Jeff Deskovic here with Cogee on the I've Been Falsely Accused show, interviewing Yamisha Sindor from USA Today.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the I've Been Falsely Accused, Part 17. I'm your host, Cogee, with my co-host, Mr. Jeffrey Deskovic, who was giving a great interview. Jeffrey, let them know who you're interviewing, and I'll let you go on and keep moving.
Yes, this is I'm interviewing Yamisha Sindor from USA Today, who, how long ago was it, Yamisha, you published a great article on difficulties of exonerees reintegrating compensation and reintegration issues?
It was a Sunday front page story, I want to say May 8th, so it's been about a month.
So I guess my final question for you, and then we'll have to bring in another guest, is do you think that this was just a one and done thing for you? I mean, do you think that you'll have a general ongoing interest in wrongful conviction and wrongful conviction issues?
I hope to do more things about wrongful convictions. I think the criminal justice system really owes it to to everyone in society to do things right, to really have people look at it very closely. And I think that journalists, as well as people like you who have foundations, as well as people who are actually working in it, lawyers and all that, I think we all have a responsibility to make sure it works. So I've been a crime reporter for about 10 years, and this is really my first kind of entry into wrongful convictions. But I think, especially with what's going on in Brooklyn, I think I'll be more interested in doing other things with exonerees and exonerations and making sure that the system is treating people the way it should be treating people.
All right, well, I want to thank you for your work, both at present as well as anticipated future endeavors that you spoke on. Cogee, is there anything you want to say to Yamiche?
I want to say thank you. I think you're doing a great job. Welcome to being a part of the team, as far as helping us get it out there and saving lives. And keep doing great work.
Thank you.
All right, Jeff.
Okay, Cogee, and with that, I believe we have another guest on deck.
What we going to do, we got to take a break for a minute, and we'll get prepared for that. And, we'll be right back in with our guests. So to everybody listening, we want to say that as y'all can hear, these cases are very serious. It's a lot going on right now in society, a lot going on in the day-to-day. Sometimes when you see things on the news, you need not bypass it. When you see it, don't change the channel. Listen to what's going on. And don't get me wrong, sometimes with the news, we can't always go on what we hear. And that's something else we've been seeing. We can't always go on what we hear. We got to investigate it a little bit more, like our guest has done, making sure that everything is what they say it is. You know what I'm saying? So we need y'all to read a little bit more. Get the newspaper, check things out, and know what's going on. Because believe me, this can hit your home, and you won't even know how to, be prepared to take care of it. You won't have the proper advice to give to your family members. So let me do this real quick. Jeffrey, I want to go to you real quick. Far as the news and the newspaper, what should people do when it comes to that situation?
People should definitely learn more about wrongful convictions, share the information with friends and family. And like the point you were just alluding to, just because we see in the news, whether that's TV, radio, print media, magazines, newspapers, somebody is accused of something, especially when it's sensationalized, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're guilty. But we have a tendency as a society to assume that. And the more that we do that, the less life we breathe into the idea of innocent until proven guilty. And that's an ideal that it's not true in reality, but we need to start making it true by the way that we view cases.
That's right. You're definitely right about that. So one thing I want to do, I want to tell y'all, stay locked in and stay tuned in. We got another great guest that's ready to come in, and Jeffrey's ready to open up and give him an interview real quick, too. This is one of Jeffrey's people that he brung in. You really want to stay tuned in, and you want to stay locked in, and most of all, have your pens and paper ready and take down the information that we're giving you. Like I said, this information can save your life, your children's lives, your co-workers' lives, anybody's life that you hear is going through this. You can say, hey, you know what? This is who you need to get in touch with. This is the steps they need to take. You can already, have them ahead of the game, because some people freak out and they just go berserk like, oh my God, I'm in this. I don't know what to do. And the families don't know what to do half of the time. The moms and the pops, they don't know what to do when it comes to the court system and the law, but you'll know. And that's what means the most, making sure you know. Because once you heard me and Jeffrey's show, I've been falsely accused, there's no excuse on saying you didn't know. You knew because you heard it on this show. You just didn't take the information down and download it and have it for who need it. So let's do the right thing. Take this information, write it down, and be ready for life. All right? We'll be right back. Hey, we back, everybody. Welcome back to the I've Been Falsely Accused radio show. This is part 17, and we definitely are bringing a lot of knowledge. We bringing great guests through the show. We really making it where you think about what we're talking about. We're showing you by example that it's really happening to people every day. People are fighting for their lives to get out. We done had people that came through here that had 22 years, 17 years, 8 years, 6 years, 40 years, 30 years. Football scores. Real high ones that shouldn't be happening. But sometimes it goes back to what we said. Sometimes you might get in trouble and you don't know what to do. Or you might sign that paper under pressure when you're being interrogated and you're going through so much. And once you sign that paper, it's like a dog fight to get out of it. That's why we try to teach people the laws. We try to let people hear true stories about what's going on. We try to make people cautious, and we try to say, just don't try to get yourself caught up in nothing. Or if you get caught up in anything, just say, I want to talk to my attorney. I'm not answering no questions. And, wait till you have an attorney or somebody present to make sure that your story is heard the way you said it and you meant it the way you said it, and no retractions, because you got the right person there to handle the situation. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go to Jay right now, and Jay's going to read about our next guest coming in. Then I'm going to Jeffrey, and Jeffrey's going to bring in our next guest, who is a guest of his that he's bringing to the show today. So go ahead, Jay.
I'd love to. Kian Khatibi was released in 2008 after serving 9 years for a stabbing he eventually discovered that his brother had committed. Beyond the travail of coping with this betrayal, he was freed from prison with only the pocket cash he had when arrested and without identification, which left him initially unable to apply for a credit card, a bank account, or assistance from welfare office. Kian strives not to be bitter, focusing intensely on making something out of his life, and he remains determined to give back to the community that helped him move on. Kian transferred from Westchester Community College to NYU Steinhardt School of Education and completed his undergraduate degree as a media, culture, and communications major. We want to welcome Kian to the show.
Thank you for coming to the show today.
Thank you.
We do appreciate you. So, Jeffrey, I'll let you come in, and Jeffrey's going to lead the interview today.
Okay, great.
So Kian, firstly, how many years were you wrongfully incarcerated, and where did your case happen at?
About 9.5 years. That's including the local jail time and state prison time. My case, the arrest and trial, occurred in Westchester County, New York.
Okay, and what was the leading cause of your wrongful conviction?
The leading cause was, I would say faulty identification, but I think that implies a mistake, and it turns out that this was it edges more toward an intentional false identification. So that's the cause.
And what was your sentence, by the way?
I had an indeterminate sentence of 7 to 14 years in state prison.
Right. Okay. And how did it come about that you were exonerated?
Well, I was exonerated in 2008 following hearings in Westchester County Court, whereas my brother had confessed to the crime. We put a motion in. The judge granted hearings. She heard the evidence about his confession. She compared it to the evidence, and she decided that this is what's going on, and she released me, and without opposition from the district attorney at that time.
Right. Now, previously, you had thought that your brother had committed a crime. In fact, your defense attorney argued that, but you never quite had you couldn't really fully prove that. Tell me more about the human side of that. I mean, wasn't there a pre-Thanksgiving meal involved? And get into the human side of that just a little bit.
Well, shortly prior to 2008. While at a Thanksgiving meal, my brother came clean, and that's what provided us with the opportunity to put the motion in finally in 2008. Originally he was a suspect along with several other people, and it really was a quite confusing event because the victims could not remember who stabbed them, and there was many people involved, and it was alcohol fueled. So this added to a lot of confusion of what exactly happened.
Right. Now, once you got in court and you had the hearing, your brother took the stand and was about to repeat, and then suddenly, what happened? What happened at that point? Did the prosecutor try to hinder your evidence, or was he really engaged in a real search for truth? What happened?
Well, that's hard to say. What the motivation of the prosecutor could be at that time. I never had the opportunity to sit down and ask. That's something most of us, we were just never privileged to actually do or find out. But and it didn't occur in my federal case. But what happened was, as my brother went to get up on the stand, of course, it is the court's duty to advise him to seek an attorney. That's just the way it works, for the protection of the witness. And he was assigned an attorney, and the attorney advised him to plead the fifth, right then and there in the courtroom. And so he went up there and he pled the fifth, and the district attorney had said that. Sorry?
Did the attorney ever tell him did the district attorney ever ask him, if you're going to say what I think that you're going to say, then you're going to take your brother's police in prison? Did that ever happen?
Well, not those exact words, but that more or less that's what was implied by stating we have the right to prosecute and we will press charges. Yes.
Wow. So, what has it been like for you trying to put your life back together again after being exonerated? What are some of the difficulties?
Well, believe it or not, one of the hardest things to do was simply to get all these little things that everybody else takes for granted, that you compile over months or years. But you really got to do it in such a short time. Once you get out and all you have is a little bag of goods, you got to figure out, hey, look at all these toothbrushes which are now available to me that I haven't seen them in years. Which one's for me? Which toothpaste is for me? Socks. What kind of clothes are going to fit you, and all these things, and plus you got to find a bed to sleep in. It can be very overwhelming.
But despite the being overwhelmed, though, didn't you? You just recently you graduated Cardozo Law School with a law degree. Talk about your experience being in the law school and yet having exonerees. That's kind of an unusual combination. Yeah,
it was a really interesting experience. I think in every class I took, no matter what the subject, even if it was unrelated to criminal law or civil rights or constitutional law, I always felt I had a different perspective on the on the outtake on what the professors are saying. I think that gave me some good insight into the law. If not a bit skeptical as to what's going on in the courtroom, at least it gave me a different perspective, a more critical perspective, and I think that's a good thing.
Now, actually, one of the more interesting things about the human side of your story is that you actually wrote your own winning 440 motion, which is what triggered the evidentiary hearing where you were assigned counsel and the evidence came out. Would you advise our listeners, do you think, how important is it, would you say, for someone who's been wrongfully incarcerated to go to the law library, study the law, and be proactive in trying to overturn their conviction?
Well, it's very simple. If it's incumbent on you to do everything you can and fight tooth and nail to prove that you did not do it, and there's no rest for the weary. And if you don't do that for years. I mean, it's not going to happen right away, you know. That's just the way it works. If you don't give all you can, you're just simply, you're not going to get out on those terms.
What about getting out on parole? I mean, is that well, you know what? We're gonna take a break for commercial. We'll come back with you, Kian. Thanks for joining myself and Coach on the I've Been Falsely Accused. We'll continue with you after the break.
Hey, we back, everybody. Welcome back to the I've Been Falsely Accused radio show, part 17, with me, Cogee, your host, and Mr. Jeffrey Deskovic, my co-host, who's doing a great job in interviewing. And to our guests, you're giving a great interview, and thank you for being on the show today.
Sure thing.
Absolutely, Cogee. Great, always great to work with you as well. So, Kian, we were asking about, you were in the middle of answering a question, how difficult is it for someone who's been wrongfully convicted to gain their release via parole? And did you have any experience with that?
Well, you know, here's how it goes. If you let your sentence naturally expire, you know, you'll be able to, you know, you'll get released by the state. But if you have a type of sentence where you go before a parole board periodically, as it is in many states, New York, and my sentence was 7 to 14. So you go before a parole board when you're close to 7 years, and every 2 years thereafter. Now, if you go before a board, one of the things naturally that they want to consider in releasing any inmate, this is if the person expresses remorse and says, you know, hey, I'm sorry for what I did. You know, that's a consideration that the parole board makes. Now, the problem is when you're innocent and you're in jail and you go before the parole board, you can't be sorry for acts that you did not commit. And simply by expressing innocence before the parole board, that's called lack of remorse, and that's a reason to deny you parole. So it works against you right there. And you know, obviously that's what happened to me and many others in New York State and abroad who have protested their innocence in front of the parole board. There's no chance of getting out.
What kept you going though? Why not just quit while you were still incarcerated wrongfully? What kept you going?
Well, you know, it's like you gotta believe that, hey, this is wrong. Something like this shouldn't happen, you know. But then you find yourself, oh my God, it did happen. I'm really here. I'm incarcerated. This is a nightmare, and I'm not waking up for it. But you know, you could I just believed, and you know, I think that's what most people do who fight for themselves while in there to get things done and to prove their innocence. Just, hey, this can't last forever. Somehow, somebody's going to be smart enough or just have the right information in front of them where they're going to take another look and say, hold up, something's wrong here, you know. And the thing is, it's not going to be the first person to read whatever letter you send, or it's not going to be the second, but it's, you know, down the road, some you know, the wheels will turn, you know. And it took me 9.5, it took you 16, but eventually those wheels are going to turn, you know. So it's just a matter of time and effort and perseverance, but that's the case.
Now, at one point, Kian, while you were still in law school, you were actually an intern here at the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice. What was that like being an intern who himself is an exoneree? I mean, that's typically not what, you know, the interns here are, or what the interns are in other innocence organizations across the country. What was that? What was that like?
Well, you know, it was actually it was a great experience, and not just from learning what's going on with the process which occurs on the outside of helping to get these people out, but just receiving letters and communication from inmates on the inside, knowing that was you a few years back, sending out a line or a hook and just trying to get somebody to pay attention. And there I was on the other side and reading it, and I was like, I'm really glad that I have an opportunity to help people like me who really are stuck in such a horrible position, and just overwhelming position, and that was great.
Right. Is there anything that you'd like, anything you'd like our listeners to understand about wrongful convictions that you think they likely don't know that your experience really could speak to?
Well, I think that I think what people don't realize about wrongful convictions is that many times the same proof, the same evidence, the same criteria is there to prove somebody's innocence the moment they are convicted, but yet they get convicted anyway because people turn a blind eye. And this continues throughout the person's incarceration. And it's a matter of communicating a lot of times communicating the same information in a different way to different people. And that's one of the hardest parts to do, to communicate in an effective way, to amass organize all this amount of information and get it right before the right people. And it's just a shame because you have a lot of people, and obviously from your experience, as well. Like right in the beginning, you'd say, "Look at this, and look at this. Why was I convicted in the first place?" But nobody wants to listen, and sometimes it just takes years for people just to listen to the same information that you've been telling the whole time, and finally someone gets it, And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. A lot of times people think that, it's always just some new information, something clicked, but it's not always that case.
Okay, so this last question, then we got to go to a break here. What type of law would you like to practice once you pass the bar?
Obviously I want to use my experience in a way that benefits others and benefits, my career as well. I think I focused in school on this, which would be criminal defense and civil rights and constitutional litigation, and that's what occurred in my case. And I had an opportunity to watch a lot, and I think that's the direction that I want to go.
All right. Well, listen, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Cogee, anything you want to say to Kian?
Kian, I want to say thank you for being on the show today. You know what, Jeffrey? Let's do this. Let's cross him over into the third hour.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, I want to cross him over. Then I can, ask him some questions. So let's definitely bring him over because he said a lot of heartfelt stuff, and I really could feel his heart, on what he was saying on certain things, and I just want to ask him a few questions. All right?
Sure thing, guys.
Okay, Ken, thank you. And like I said, you definitely given, a good interview. I'm really hearing, like I said, Jeffrey's asking you questions that's really bringing your heartfelt words out. So we definitely want to talk about that when we come in. So everybody stay locked in and tuned in. We're going into our third and final hour. And like I said, you hear the stories, everybody. This is real. Stay locked in. We'll be right back.